Welcome to the PantheonPlus Rewind. Hey everybody, Minus here, and welcome to episode 3 of the PantheonPlus Rewind. As always, we thank you greatly for taking the time to listen to us, either on YouTube or via download on Spotify or iTunes. I'm once again joined by Omega Contagion and Theric, whom of course this wouldn't even be possible without. So good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. It was a busy week at work, but I'm ready to talk some Pantheon.
I feel like you're one of the few people that can say that. What about you, Omega?
I'm doing good too. I'm in quarantine and all that, but I feel like it was a really busy week for me as well.
Awesome. Yeah, staying busy in this has been really the way to get through it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
Working from home works for me.
Yeah. Let's not waste any time though. Let's go ahead and just jump right in. So we'll jump right into segment 1 here. We'll talk about VR. This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. So let's start with VR's Twitter. There were a couple tweets that came out this last week. The first one was pretty funny because I think it paints a really big picture of us as gamers. But it said, how do you deal with a PC crash in the middle of a gaming session? So I'll read mine first. I did the little face where the emoji where it's like, so it says this face, and then usually one loud curse word, then not breathing while hoping an easy restart with no new issues present themselves. Then typically a sigh of relief, hopping back into the game and blaming the healer. So that's my typical, but it's pretty funny. Let me read you through what people say here because there's a common theme of instant rage. Basgrim says, say demoralizing things to the computer tower until it understands that I am its boss and I am not to be trifled with. Let's see here. We have Ramathorn. Yeah, Ramathorn 937 says, you mean when our parents needed to get on the phone and we had to get off the internet? So,
oh my God,
little throwback to the old days.
Dial up.
Yeah, so good. Tommy Davidson says, depends. Is there a window nearby? Which, oh boy. I love everybody who thinks of Micah. He's a nice guy, very calm, very delivered. And his response was with strings of profanity that would make even the most seasoned dwarf blush. Nathan's is great because I can actually see him doing this. It says, I always inspect my PC as if there's something physically wrong with it in disbelief, screaming, no. Then maybe a few curse words. And I always tend to think anything bad that happens is Windows' fault, which is pretty common, right?
Yeah, I think that's true, actually.
It's so less common than it used to be, but I think they'll have to live forever with that. I can't read exactly what this says, and it is censored, but Dr. Sinister, who's been a follower of the community for a long time, he says, vigorously say, drawn out really bad, and it says, turn it on, hit start Windows normally. You guys know how that screen comes up, and wait till the reload the game. Probably say, well, F words, maybe this is BS, or 2, gather myself, and hope the group didn't wipe without heals from me. So he's a healer, so I would definitely blame him. Couple last ones here. Bittoman says, sweat a little, panic, reload the game, hoping my group hasn't kicked me for being a noob. Dustin M says, get another drink. That's a good one. He's the only person that didn't rage. It was just an excuse to drink more.
Yeah, I like that one. Nice and chill.
And then the last one is one of my favorites. Ben Collins says, say to it, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I think he's a parent. He's got to be a parent.
He's heard that too much and knows the pain.
Or yeah, maybe it's his parents saying it to him. I had 2 choices in this how to respond to this. And they were both clips from the movie Office Space. And I don't know if you guys have seen Office Space, but it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it was either the one where they're destroying the printer in the field as a group or with the guy swearing at the printer because of PC load letter. And I went with that one. I love that clip. And that's how I feel when I get the crash.
That's funny.
It is funny how much printers are the bane of office work.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started.
So the next one is interesting just because it says, describe your thoughts on gaming podcasts. And I've gotten some kind words from VR, which that's what I'll say, just that, about the fact that we're doing a podcast. They seem to appreciate it. So it's interesting that this came up. I don't think it's directly related at all, but this came up and it's just funny because we have one. So it said, in one word, describe your thoughts on gaming podcasts. Micah says love. And then he also put some description of why. You generally learn a lot, even if you're just a regular player on the subject game. Plus, it's always great to see others' perspectives. Have a handful I watch/listen to every week. Sorry. JJ Padaria, he actually is an anime writer. He says, if you mean gaming podcasts in general, then it's oversaturated. But if they're unique and focused podcasts, that's the key these days. So that's good. Then just reading through, let's see here. Andre said apathy. Basgrim did one of my old tricks and I approved it. He put on the go with dashes between it. He said, that's one word, right? And then I replied, that's the role I have used always. If it has hyphens, it's a go. So that's the trick. Yeah, don't let Kilson stop you guys from being creative. Just use a lot of hyphens. Dr. Sinister also replied to that, said fantastic. Dan Scholl says convenient. Bonsai Badger says community. Starhawk Ranger says boring. So there's definitely a lot of different perspectives on it out there. I'll be honest with you guys. I've consumed a couple podcasts, and honestly, I'll show you how much of a nerd I am. They're mostly wrestling podcasts. So like when Talk is Jericho came out, I followed that religiously. Steve Austin had one for a little bit. I followed for a little bit. So there were a select few that I got into, but that was pretty much the only ones I've ever really followed. How about you guys?
I'm a huge podcast listener, and my drive to work would not be the same without podcasts. When I was into Hearthstone pretty heavily, the Angry Chicken podcast was like one of my favorites, and I looked forward to it every week because it was just, it just sort of scratched that itch. When I couldn't game, it's like listening to a podcast about your favorite game is one of my favorite things. So I listen to a whole bunch of different ones, though, probably like 3 or 4 every week that I listen to regularly.
Yeah, I don't really consume any myself. I mean, if you can count just things like this, but with people's, face cams and they're just having a conversation as a podcast type of thing, like I do listen to those rather than watch them. But in terms of subscribing or downloading to podcasts, it's never really been my form.
Awesome. Yeah. And then, of course, the last thing I just put was rewind, one word. And I put cheesy self-promotion. So
Oh, how cool was it that they tweeted a question on podcasts on the 3rd week of doing our podcast?
No, I'm not.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe it has something. Who knows?
I'm guessing Starhawk Ranger just needs to listen to this one too. Maybe
he just hasn't found the right one yet.
Yeah, let's go. Well, actually, after the show, we'll all tweet him episode 3 and be like, "Hey, maybe this is the podcast for you." So the last thing here is obviously we did a whole show, so I'm going to try not to get super into this, but there was something important I wanted to throw out there, and it was about the communication changes that they have with going from a bi-weekly to a monthly content out there, news for all of us. So they tweeted, fellow Pantheons, we're returning to monthly streams. Bi-weekly has been a scheduling and logistics challenge, and we want all hands working on the game. Monthly stream allows for more beans, less filler. Our next Pantheon dev stream will be on April 30th. So that led to a lot of conversation. It led to our PantheonPlus show on Thursday. It led to a ton of forum discussion. And there was a post, and I expect some of our fans or some of the people that support us, or even just those that follow us, just to know what we were saying. There's going to be people that disagree with me on this. So red flag here. I understand what I'm about to say may not be super popular, but I want to make sure that I say this because I believe it, and that's what I am. So Brass put a post out in the forums because they post this in the forums, and a deleted post basically cried and complained and said they're quitting and they're done following this game, and this is how, and this company can't do it, blah, 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 blah. Little children with keyboards. So the statement that Brass made after that was this. There's no question that making a game is challenging, even with the support of so many amazing people in our community. VR is a small indie company and consistently hitting above its weight class in quality. Bear in mind is that this dev team does not have the massive budgets of companies who traditionally make AAA products. It means that the dev team has to constantly adjust process, pipelines, and commitments as we all work towards PA5 and Alpha. It ain't easy, she says. And if there were a AAA company, no one would get more than the briefest of peeks into the game in its pre-alpha state. So we've got that going for us. More openness and visibility, a along with allowing everyone to see the challenges of development evolution. Don't base assessment. That's some own thinking there. Don't base assessment of the game on the changes to the stream schedule. Having managed streams for 2 large companies, I can tell you that the adjustments are normal even when a game is live, never mind in pre-alpha. Now, this next line I am such a big fan of, and I have said this to people many times to sometimes be attacked because people think it's not a community thing to say. She said this: "To all those who leave, we understand. Thank you and good luck. We hope to welcome you back one day. To all those who stay, we really appreciate the support. Thank you, and let's carry on this journey together one step at a time." I think it is extraordinarily necessary that if people are unhappy, negative mongers, I don't care if they donated to the game, they are not entitled to hurting the community. And people always say to me when I say, maybe it's time for you to leave, or hey, goodbye, or even harsher, hey, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out, right? Stuff like that. People are like, oh, you're a community person. You're a face of the community. You can't say things like that. You're hurting No, I'm not. Because community works 2 ways. Community is a group of people that can talk, have debate, and not be children behind keyboards, whether they agree or disagree. And the people who are there to sow negativity, they don't need to be there. And there's no entitlement because you donated money to this game. You did not invest in Pantheon. You donated. And if you are having a hard time following it religiously, hanging on to every detail, and your excitement level can't be contained, then you need to step away. And that doesn't mean don't come back. It means step away. If you're not helping, then stop hurting. And I've been a huge, huge advocate for that stance. And seeing Brass put that in, and I'll read it one more time. To all those who leave, we understand. Thank you and good luck. We hope to welcome you back one day. Couldn't be more true. What are your Omega? What is your thoughts on that?
Same as yours, man. And I think a phrase that you said just there, something like, if you can't help, stop hurting, or something like that. Like, I don't enjoy over negativity. Like, constructive feedback is great in any situation. And when we're building a game together as a community, giving our feedback and stuff like that, and just riding this out, it's hard. And it's hard to stay Pantheon patient, but I can't stand people who are like that. And I can't stand that mentality that, like, hey, I gave you X amount of money. It's not an investment. Like you said, you're donating. And the level of childness that's in some people just blows my mind. So I'm all behind Brass. I'm all behind like this community matters thing. And if that means some people got to step away because of reasons, like, step away. You're going to love the game when you finally come back to it. So
Yeah, just add quickly on that. I really think it's an honest statement by Brass. I think she recognizes, which is important, and not everybody realizes this, is that communities are like individuals in terms of their health and wellness, right? You can have really unhealthy communities, which are a symptom of when you have maybe people who are not well themselves. And I'm not talking about like, mental illness. I'm just saying being burnt out or being tired or sort of at the end of your rope in terms of what you're willing to put up with or tolerate. So when you get that going on, it does affect the community health overall. So I think it's a really wise approach by Brass to take. And it's hard for a company to say, if you're not having fun or you're not enjoying the journey, go, take a break, step away, come back when you're ready. So I think it's a great statement.
Yeah. And, the thing I've always said is this: I understand we're in a much more PC culture and we try to make sure we're inclusive of everybody. I totally get it. But at the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself. You have to be true to your beliefs, and being true, while sometimes it's harder, is always the easiest answer than trying to beat around the bush or appease people, because that will always come back to burn you. If the appeasement level that you're trying to do for certain people is not directly correlated to what you think and feel inside, it won't work. It's not, I'm not calling them lying. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but if you tell a lie, then you're trying to cover for that lie every time you tell that story, every time you talk to that person. If you tell the truth, you get in trouble once and then you move on. Being truthful, being forthright, and believing in your journey and believing in what you do and that you're going to make a great game means people will come back. Or if they don't, people will replace them. And it's okay. It is okay. This game has said since day one, it's not here to appease everybody. It's here to fit into a special crowd. And if that special crowd grows and gets bigger and more people want to be a part, phenomenal. But you have to stick to that. So.
When the community speaks, we listen. Let's dig into social media and see what they're talking about.
Okay, so we will start over at the Pantheon MMO forums, as we always do. And this week, we're going to be looking at some specific class discussions. It seems like after the last dev stream, there were a lot of people in which the shaman was featured. A lot of people are sort of thinking about the ins and outs of certain skills and abilities. So we'll start with a post by Bam Bam, and this is in the shaman subforums. He wanted to know, and again, some of these questions and the answers are not coming from VR. These are just community discussions, so we don't, not definitive. But his question was, so in the last stream, we saw shaman spells. 2 of them were group heals, and one was a single target that buffed healing output of the group healing. So his concern was that when you need to max heal throughput on the tank to keep them alive, you also build up an amazing amount of aggro because you're healing the entire group for the same amount as the tank. So he had three specific questions. 1, will shamans get an aggro clear ability? Will area healing have less aggro? And will aggro only work for actual healing or also for overhealing? So a few people responded to this. Firstly, Vandrad, who we talked about last week, and regular contributor to the community. He said group healing aggro only applies if others in the group need healing. So I think he, this is coming from something that VR has said in the past, perhaps, and it would answer the question about overhealing. Foolbach23 said, those are both very valid concerns. Group heals are normally only mana efficient when you healed 1 over half the group size, plus the cast time is always longer. Previous MMOs, when all the group members had low health, you'd want to shield yourself before casting due to mobs aggroing onto you, or to have an aggro wipe ready afterwards. Another person said, Anista Soles, probably pronouncing that wrong.
That was pretty good. If I would have butchered it.
Yeah, you're braver with names than I am. So he said the group heals in the stream didn't seem to use a ton of mana. With the shaman's cannibalize ability, plus mana regen in combat, I don't see this as an issue. Further testing will, of course, be the true answer, and he's stating he's really excited to play a shaman after seeing that stream. And then Bam Bam followed it up with another question based on the last response, specifically about the cannibalize ability, which I just mentioned. And just for clarity, what that means is basically being able to sacrifice your own health for the sake of certain benefits. And in the stream, I think the skill was named Chrono Burn. I could be mistaken. If you guys, if I'm wrong, let me know. So Bam Bam followed up with another question. He said, how do you feel about that? It's nice for our vision that we can tap down from 100%, so we can benefit from healing ourselves to get spell haste faster. Let me know how you think. What are the pros and cons? And then some of the same people responded again. Wig said, guess we will have to see how the regen works in game, depending on its balance. But from what I saw, it looked pretty overpowered. I'm sure it'll be tweaked. And then Fullbach23 again, he agreed with what Wig was saying, how it looks like it's extremely overpowered for a non-endgame player. And that regen would only matter if your main heal wasn't a heal over time. He was thinking back to Everquest 1 when you didn't get your heal over time until like level 60, and it was extremely hard to obtain. That's why a lot of shamans rolled trolls or Ixars, because they had that innate regen bonus that helped them with that sort of cannibalize ability. And then Anista Solis again said, I could see a shaman cast a group heal over time and then use cannibalize skill to recover a positive amount of mana. He agreed that it needed to be tested to make sure it wasn't overpowered. He had a funny memory of playing Everquest outside Karnor's castle and having a situation where he was down to basically 2 hit points because he had cannibalized his own health so much, and feeling, thankful that there was a druid in the group that had a regen going as well. And they were fighting a bunch of stuff outside Karnor's castle, which I have a lot of memories of as well. So it really resonated with me. And then lastly, Vandrad said he really loved it. And I remember he was in the chat during the stream saying how much he enjoyed seeing that spell as well. It was the second spell he was hoping would make an appearance in the game right behind Slow. So yeah, so just some questions and answers about the shaman abilities. Sticking with class skills, there was a thread in the wizard class subforum that deserves a bit of highlighting. And this is from Ezreal. And it's a discussion called the 4th spell line or focus. And before I go further, if you look at the class description page for the wizard on the main page, the main class pages, it details the schools of fire, cold, or sorry, the 3 schools of fire, cold, and arcane, which are known. But it also says, quote, there's a rumored to be a 4th school of magic discovered by certain recondite wizards, devastating in effect and untethered to elemental constraints. So obviously people who are planning on playing a wizard or sort of paying attention to this have been wondering, for a long time what that 4th school of magic is. And I don't know if you guys remember during the stream, there was that when they brought up that like huge page of stats, right?
If you look at a great page.
Yeah, it was a lot of information on it. And Ezreal with the eagle eye saw that there was actually a list of, so it was fire focus, cold focus, arcane focus, and then underneath that was essence focus. So he's sort of speculating that perhaps that 4th mysterious school is essence. So maybe we got a little peek into something that might be not explicitly stated in the class page. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I always like to point those kinds of things out because attention to detail is kind of a fun thing.
Ezreal, great job. That's an awesome look. I've been wanting to look over that list more. Now that makes me want to do it even more. So there you go. Ezreal, you broke it, but we're going to break it on our stream here for you as well and try to get that out there more and get you some credit. So good stuff, Derek. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's really good on him. So lastly, one of the areas I want to try and highlight every week is the introduce yourself section. And this is where folks come who have pledged to support the game and can post and share what interests them about Pantheon and what their hopes for the game are. Like last week when we shared our stories about discovering Pantheon, I really enjoy reading people's introductions and always try to post a reply welcoming them into the community. So this week we had an introduction from Zoom, and he admitted he's been a lurker for a long time and he finally took the plunge and pledged. So he described himself as a longtime MMO player, starting with Meridian 59. He jumped on EQ during beta, which is pretty cool, and many more since then. He says he stopped playing MMOs for many years until coming back twice to the EQ progression servers. And like a lot of us, he hasn't really seen anything else that's been interesting besides Pantheon. So even though he's been really looking hard. So welcome to the community, Zoom. Glad to have you, man. So from there, we'll go over to Reddit and look at the PantheonMMO subreddit. And the discussion that I want to start with is one by Jakubov. So he wanted to know more about how resist buffs work in Pantheon. So he asked the question, I looked around, but I couldn't really find anything about this. Have they released any information? Basically, my question is, to what extent can players raise their resistances? Will entire sets of resist gear be available? And he was thinking about back to Everquest. Basically, you got to a point, and this may have been in the PvP sort of world, which I never really dove into, but it may have been in the PvE as well, where you could raise up somebody's resistance, players, to basically to the point where they're virtually immune to a certain type of damage. And will that be the case in Pantheon? Have they said anything about this? So here's some of the responses. Somebody said resists will be in the game. They just haven't specified how they'll work yet. Sparks Interface, who's the moderator over at the Pantheon MMO subreddit, said PvE and PvP will be balanced separately. So that's sort of a different thing, sort of saying,
that's kind of a scary statement.
Yeah. And I know that we had some discussions about PvP on the Discord channel this week. So, it's a whole nother topic in and of itself. So I won't maybe dive into it too much, but somebody else said they've got acclimation system, which isn't about combat resists, but environmental resists. So I actually had that was my comment or my question during the last dev stream, because they were talking a lot about this, and it sounded like there was some overlap between this and the acclimation system. They didn't answer it, but I don't think there is. I think they are two separate systems, but we'll wait and see, I guess. Somebody else said in the latest stream, they showed that spending mastery points on certain spells would increase either personal or group resists for that type of magic. And then somebody else, Renthras, said, and I think this is a really good point, is that a lot of modern games make resist scale exponentially, but with a point of diminishing returns. So, for example, if you get a frost resist cast on you, it starts out at like a 10%, and then every subsequent spell that increases that gives you a little less overall. So I mean, basically you'll get to the point where further resists won't give you any benefit. And I went back and actually watched the dev stream because I wanted to see what they had said about this. And the best that I could get, or what I gathered, was that they mentioned Banes and debuffs spells stacking from multiple shaman, if you have multiple shaman in your group, on NPCs, right? So these are the ones that lower the NPC's resistance. As well, they did note that heals over time through on players do stack. It wasn't stated explicitly, but that does tend to make me think that resists would also stack. Omega, what do you think? Do you have any sort of insight or anything that you've seen from this?
I mean, just on the shaman specifically, that almost everything that they do has a stacking effect. And a lot of them intertwine too. Like there's something about their healing, like every different element of Bane that you have on an offensive target gives you a buff to your healing you do for your defensive target. So I think there is a lot of interesting stacking in there. In terms of like his exact question, I don't have an answer myself. I haven't seen that specifically.
Yeah.
Right,
Minus, what do you remember?
I don't have an exact answer either, but just playing MMORPGs and being in stack grinds quite a bit and doing a lot of math, I think that it's commonplace to the point of, like, you can say commonplace and it doesn't have to be in, but commonplace to like it is, like, it's what you do. There's a difference between, I guess. Diminishing returns is now a part of our culture, and I think you're going to have diminishing returns, because the last thing they want is the real hardcore players to farm up gear for a boss fight that, okay, everybody get this gear, we're going to have to wear this in, and now this boss mechanic that's a main mechanic can't hurt us. I just don't think that'll ever happen. And I think that if you get to a point where you can be completely resistant to something, it's almost game breaking. So I think you'll see diminishing returns with some sort of soft cap. And then the rest caps will just be, you just won't be able to get enough of it to get, where you need to be to make yourself immune. Can you resist a lot? Can you get to 50%? Maybe, sure.
Right.
But I think that, you're never going to get anywhere near 100%.
Right. Yeah. I think that's probably got to be the way it is, right?
Yeah, and it would be boring, like, if the game let you do that. Like, yeah, it's cool to be able to feel that you're this, badass who can resist everything, but in terms of gameplay, that's just boring.
Yeah, you don't want to trivialize the content just because you're...
exactly.
Yeah. Good. Okay. And then actually Rentharas, I think I'm saying that right, had another question on the Pantheon, the subreddit. And this is sort of an interesting question, because he was asking about group composition, either just single group or raid group composition. Now, the discussion sort of got a little sidetracked with just talking about raids in general and raid sizes, which we've talked about quite a bit and can do a whole 2-hour discussion about. But he was thinking more specifically of like a group archetype. So like how many tanks, how many healers, how many DPS, how many control. And he had some cool ideas, and I always love the creative sort of naming of things. I don't know if it's just me, but he had like the group party that he called the healing tower, right? 2 healers, the double guardian party with 2 tanks, the phalanx fortis, the 2 tanks, 2 healers type of composition, and basically sort of going off on that idea, which it did get a lot of people sort of coming up with really interesting ideas. Somebody actually asked, they weren't sure if Pantheon is set on 6 person parties, which I believe they are. He talked about how in Final Fantasy XI, group compositions evolved over time, and that people learned more about the content and how to best approach each scenario, which of course makes sense. But you'd get like, we talk about meta sometimes, right? And meta in terms of what your class is, but meta group composition over time, right? But again, the creativity is what really interests me here. Rentharas came back and said that the streams we've seen, I guess he went back and looked at some of the streams, the group composition has been sort of interesting. It's usually been 2 tanks or 1 tank and an off tank, 2 healers, 1 support, 1 damage class. And that allows flexibility for a 4 or 5 man party that doesn't normally allow for that when you have the 6-man party. So it gives you that extra option.
I could never take 1 damage in a group.
Yeah, it seems. Yeah, I know your philosophy, Minus, is the quicker something's dead, the better defense it is, right?
Yeah, you don't run out of mana if you kill it quick. So.
Yeah. I think that I should have quoted you better. That's your statement. And as a DPS player, I can totally get behind that. I'm all in. our pal Budrick had a really cool, taking it even to the next level of sort of naming group compositions. He wanted to say how much he enjoys doing sort of MMO brainstorming and theory crafting in this regard. And it's nice to see people thinking about this. So he had a bunch of different types of groups. One was called the powerhouse, the control, the offensive, the sustainability, the passive, the well-rounded. Anyway, and they're all, composed of different combinations of tank, healer, DPS, and utility. Somebody, I'm going to give Draslant HDF my vote for favorite. He said the 6 DPS party, which I like to call the Rangers of Death. Maybe dying a lot, but also killing things a lot. So, friend of the show, Coco Mojo, who's been on PantheonPlus a few times, he wanted to highlight how this really shows how important support and control classes like the Enchanter, the Bard, and the Necro would be. Because when you have that control class, it just gives you so much extra utility and things you can do. How the Bard, Bards in raids have always been sort of extremely powerful in terms of the buffs that they can offer the group. Anyway, he goes on to sort of talk about that quite a bit, and I totally agree with that. And then he had some other ideas as well. But it's just a good idea. What do you guys think? I know we've sort of joked around about it, but do you guys think that there will be like a group composition meta that sort of evolves?
I think, I mean, it's kind of like what BattleAx was talking about this week on their show about metas. Like, there's always going to be people who find the meta and think that the meta is the only way to play. But what I really hope, and what VR has said, like, they're developing these classes really focusing on viability rather than like a meta type thing. And I think that's going to be a hard thing for them to really balance. But in the end, all the classes, they're so unique, and I think you'll be able to get away with having some really interesting mixes and not so much focusing on like, well, we need 2 tanks or else we're just going to fail completely. Especially like within the healers, I did a fun show with Budrick a couple of weeks ago where we talked about all the healers, and there's a lot of interdependency between the healer classes, and they can really help each other out to get maximum healing. So I think in general, it's always going to be a thing, meta and people when it comes to gear or group composition. But I think Pantheon is going to have a really good approach, and you'll be able to do a lot more with some odd mixtures than I think people can think of at the top of their head.
Meta is funny to me because meta is one of the bad words in gaming. I don't understand why. And it stems from a lot of what I consider like player jealousy. Like the player that says, well, I want to do that, and I'm not allowed because of meta. The problem is if you make a group or a guild and you want to do something, it's your right and responsibility because you've taken the time to lead and create and say what you want. And if you're a player that doesn't fit into that person's ideal, one, go find another person to be with or make your own. In every MMORPG, you can make your own group. Meta's not going away because, as we even said earlier, math doesn't go away. These games are built on math. And if there's math, there can be a solve for math. And there may be a few different possible outcomes, but there's going to be meta. I have played MMORPGs since EQ. Meta has never once affected me because I typically make my own groups. I'm typically an officer or a leader of a guild, and I typically play when I want to play and how I want to play. So I've never enforced meta. We took enhancement shamans in BFA in the first raid. I was a warrior tank. They were considered the worst. It was actually considered they couldn't clear heroic. It was impossible, and we did. There's enhancement shamans were rated the worst class WoW ever designed at that point, and we still went and we beat it with them. Meta is if people are too impatient to handle learning against like things that maybe aren't common knowledge, like how do you do it with an enhancement shaman? What do they bring? What can we make them do to alleviate and help someone else be better? If people aren't willing to dive into the group composition of your friends to make it work, then find other people to play with. Meta is enabled by player jealousy. If you don't fit somewhere, it's okay. Go fit somewhere else.
I was just going to say, I think like where people really get focused on meta as well is like they've done it this way and they know it works, and it's almost like people don't really play MMOs for like adventure anymore. Like it's to clear that daily content or the weekly content and be like, okay, we're doing our second raid of the week and we have to clear it as fast as possible, so we got to go with the meta that we know that works, rather than finding something with what you got and enjoying yourself.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say too. It's just the demographic that I think is coming to Pantheon, at least from the outset. Given the level of experience and the years that they've been playing MMOs, I think meta stuff won't be as big, at least off the hop. When maybe I get a less experience or some new people to MMOs coming into the game, there might be more of a reliance on it because you don't need to sort of think about it, different compositions and how to make that work. But yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So, and we'll finish up over on Facebook. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Pantheon MMO RPG Facebook group. They surpassed 1,000 members this week. So congrats to them. So if you're over there and that's Facebook is your jam, then you're looking for a group of fans, Pantheon fans to hang out with, you can't go wrong with them. So go check them out.
I just want to say congratulations to Chase, who's doing a great job over there. And also, Sparks. I've talked a lot about Reddit and some of these and on PantheonPlus U and how much that's evolved and how it's becoming such a better culture there. It's always going to be Reddit. You have to understand that. But Sparks interface has done just an incredible job. And I don't think I've given him enough shout outs as by name, that he's done an incredible job with that Reddit. So if in the past you were really turned off by that Reddit, it's still going to be Reddit, but there's a lot better conversation going on there. And I really want to thank him. And now that I'm part of that Facebook group, Chase does a great job. So I just want to say good job to both those guys, running these pieces of the community that are really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's it for this week's community discussions.
Just what are those creators up to out there?
Okay, guys, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because we've talked about some of it, but let's talk a little bit about what the content creators have done this week. And there's only 3 that really have done some stuff. That's us here at Pantheon Plus. We already talked about it. We had our Pantheon Plus U episode, which you can go back and watch on YouTube, about the communication changes. There was a lot of good conversation, a lot of good critique, a lot of different opinions. So check that out. We also did announce in a small announcement video, which you can also view on YouTube or check out on Twitter. We have 2 pretty exciting things coming up this week. First, we're going to be interviewing the developer of Valere, Dr. Greenspoon. And it's an interesting time frame because it's going to be on Monday. And it's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern. So this is a much different time. So we do hope people can make it out. But 3 p.m. Eastern, because we want to capture not just the North American audience, but the European audience as well, as Dr. Greenspoon is from France. So excited to really talk with him. And if you haven't looked at Valere much and you're curious, we do have a pre-alpha impressions video, that you can check out on the YouTube page as well. So you can see a little bit about the game. And then the other huge news update, guys, this is super nerdy. It's super cheesy, and it is going to be a freaking blast. But we have the Pantheon Dungeon Group Draft coming up on episode 32 of Pantheon Plus U. We have been talking about it on Twitter like crazy. We have a poll up on YouTube. Watch the announcement video if you're curious what it's all about. I won't get into detail, but that should be a great time Thursday night at 9 o'clock. Myself, Nathan, Militus, and then the community are all going to draft a team from 24 well-known community members. So that's going to be great. Moving on to... What's that?
I just said that's going to be great.
Yeah, it should be pretty good. Moving on to NathanNapalm. Nathan went really hard on Final Fantasy VII. I think he put out like 500 videos. So if you want to learn anything about Final Fantasy VII Remake, he has a ton of them out there. And I want to congratulate him because this is really awesome to hear. He actually was, they seeked him out to become a partner for the MMO called Fractured, which is incredible. He didn't sign up and get it selected. They actually came to him because of his channel and what he does for the community here. So that was really cool to see. So he put out some videos, which he also gave away some game keys. And if you're interested in it, check out his video because he does have a couple videos detailing what it's all about. And I just got to thank him because he also was able to get me an alpha key. So we'll be able to cover some of that or talk a little bit about that game as well, whether it's me or Omega or whoever talking about it. So pretty exciting stuff. And the last piece is BattleAxTheater had a couple different things going on. It was mentioned earlier in the show, but they covered the term meta and what it means to the multiplayer experience in online games on BattleAx Live. And don't forget, you can catch BattleAx Live Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, pretty much every week, unless there's something that comes up. And then they recapped, so they did 2 straight weeks of Saga of Leucemia streams, and they recapped all of that into a smaller kind of pint-sized intake. So if you wanted to kind of get all the good juicy details from their 2 longer interviews, you can check out that video that Def put out. It's a nice little recap. And that's everything for this week.
The Plus in Pantheon Plus. Here's your MMORPG news.
All right, so MMO genre news. not too much big news happened this week, but we had a lot of little things happening. And those little things are events. Apparently, 'tis the season for in-game events, and there's a lot of things going on out in the MMO worlds this week. Neverwinter's doing stuff, Elder Scrolls Online, Star Trek Online, Skyforge has 2 events going. Maybe one ended and the other one started. I'm not too sure. But throughout the week, I kept finding news about different games starting events, and it's kind of mind-boggling to keep track of. But needless to say, if you're playing an MMO right now, there's a high chance that there's some sort of event going on. To expand on this quickfire random stuff, Ragnarok Online is getting a new city and a new class. Phantasy Star Online 2 is now in full release on the Xbox and is coming to the PC in May as a Microsoft Store exclusive. That's pretty interesting. Several games have put out letters talking about the pandemic slowing their update progress, and a couple of the notable ones to check out are from Final Fantasy XIV and Star Wars The Old Republic. Darkfall, Rise of Aegon got a big graphical update in its latest patch. I've never played it, and I tried downloading it to check it out, but the download speed was only at like 600 kilobytes a second. And I asked on the forums if anyone had a solution for this problem, and someone with a staff account there responded about downloading from a mirror site and then doing some manual changes to the download process and all that kind of stuff. And it was just a little bit too much for me, so I didn't get to do it. But if anyone is interested in trying out Darkfall, check out for that mirror link, or just be prepared to wait a really long time.
There's 2 things that you said there that I'm a Star Trek junkie. Like old school charts, like old school, not like, not the news. I mean, I like the new movies and I like the original show. That's it. I've never played that, and we've been jumping in and out of MMOs. I might have to give that a shot.
We should do that. We should totally do that. I'm a big Next Generation guy. I'm not the original series or Voyager or anything.
Yeah,
it's all Next Generation for me.
I've not heard a lot of good, but I don't even care. At this point, we're just playing stuff to play it and check it out and try to find some good. So like you said that, and I kind of just like perked up over here like, huh.
You should do it, man. Like, I'm a big Star Trek fan too. I think I watch at least one episode of something every single day when I'm winding down the day, getting ready for bed. But the game itself, actually, I really enjoy. It's definitely got some problems, but it's fun. So you should.
Yeah, maybe we'll put that on the list, because I don't know. I just want to say dumb things like set phasers to stun and stuff while we're playing. And the other thing is, I did hook up my Xbox this week to my PC and get it completely streaming over the network properly in high quality. And I downloaded Phantasy Star Online 2 and Bless Unleashed or whatever. But Phantasy Star was one of the games I played as a kid a ton. Really big fan. So I downloaded that, and I'm going to probably check that out, and that might be on the stream list as well.
Cool. Everquest had some cool news. As of April 10th, all the time lock progression servers for Everquest have become open to everyone. All the servers except for Fippy and Lockjaw, because I guess they're going to be doing a merge really soon. The progression servers will remain open for anyone until May 8th. And alongside these open servers, there's a sale going on, a 10% discount on select items in their shop. Final Fantasy XIV, not exactly game news, but an interesting piece of player news. Some players held an in-game funeral event for a guildmate who passed away from the COVID-19 virus. The player's name was Fern Leroy, and the free company, the Figaro National Guard, held a funeral march last Sunday to honor their fallen comrade. From what I read, the march went really well. I didn't see any groups of troll players like some other similar events have seen. So that's really good. And to me, it's things like these that shine a bright light on how incredible an online community can be. Lasting and meaningful friendships are made within these games, or just even within Discord before a game even launches. But I think the way that the world is today, it's more important now than ever for players to understand like the hashtag community matters and what Pantheon and every MMO in development that we talk about on the show are really striving to recapture. And it's those social elements of the genre. I think sometimes when we're all trying to be patient for games to come out, it's easy to forget why we are wanting them so badly. We want a place to adventure with friends. We want to be part of that world that we can fit into. And we're lucky to find these places in the worlds of our games. What do you guys think about all that?
I love that. I mean, I remember in EverQuest, people got married in EverQuest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were funerals for people that had passed away as well. I think it's such a, like you said, Omega, it's such a symbolic of the health of a community for a game that to do something like that. And not to be critical of modern MMOs, but I don't think we see that as much as we used to. Just because of the game doesn't really support community building like that anymore. So kudos to those guildmates on Final Fantasy 14 and sort of honoring the life of their fallen comrade there. So that's
For sure.
awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better, so I'll go exactly with what Theric just said.
Defend the Night. Another awesome clip was put out by these guys showing off some of the new NPC stuff they've been working on. And the tweet reads, "Weekly update. We totally rebuilt our NPC controllers to allow for more modular creation of abilities and routines by mob. We tested it out by giving our serpent race evokers, and let's just say they're not pushovers anymore." So I reached out to Scribbles, who's in charge of operations, technical art, and modeling at Ninja Loot Games, for a little clarification about what exactly that all meant and what was going on in the video. And he got back to me with this. Up to this point, we've been much more focused on player combat abilities and have used fairly basic controllers for our NPC movement and combat in our testing. They were just tank and spank with only a basic attack routine. This is simply due to how we've prioritized things for testing the player class abilities, and it doesn't really reflect the dynamic combat we want to portray. We're reworking both the animation trees and the code for the AI to create a modular framework that can be reused across all of our NPCs. So in our weekly update, we showed off the framework for 3 distinct spell types that are now templates for our new controllers: AoE damage around the caster, a frontal cone AoE, and single target direct damage. We started with a simple serpent model we had shown off before, and we called this new variant a Serpent Evoker, giving him a rotation of fire spells within these 3 new templates. This week, we'll be showing off new templates for our melee NPCs, giving even our non-spellcasters a nice arsenal rather than simply a basic attack every couple of seconds. And this is just really damn cool stuff for me to learn about and to see. I'm just a gamer. I have no idea how creating a game actually works and like what they do to make those routines and the things happen. So for Scribbles to take the time to explain that to me and like talk about their techno kung fu wizardry, it was just really awesome. I really appreciate it. So thank you, Scribbles, for getting back to me on that. Anyone who hasn't seen that video, definitely go check it out. You're gonna love it. Another fun piece of Defend the Night news. For the last while, they've been holding a vote on their forums about which class would be the next class they do a big push in development for. The vote ended on April 16th, with Paladins coming in third place, Necromancers in second place, and Enchanters in first place. So congrats to the Enchanters out there. You'll be getting your dream class in no time. Defend the Night has a really nicely organized Discord server with channels for all the classes, so make sure you drop in there to chat about that class as it's being built. And a final little bit of Defend the Night news. A new topic was posted by the devs on the forums about what is vital to you when it comes to getting immersed in a game. It's mostly a discussion about lore and how that grips you, so be sure to head over there and drop them a comment about what you find so vital to pulling you into a game world. And what's really vital to me about lore and how it pulls me in is it's just got to make sense. You know, it's plain and simple for me. If a race or a class or even a creature has a specific feature about them, that feature just needs to make sense. And I kind of put in the forums like something about something like this as an example. If a race has like just incredible low light vision, there needs to be a reason that they evolved with that trait or, you know, gained that ability through some form of magic or something like that. I really like crafting characters and worlds for Pathfinder tabletop games. And whenever I make something myself, I always, you know, take a step back and think, okay, that's really cool, but why does it exist like this? What happened in the world's history to make it this way? I just hate it when things don't make any sense. And I'm sure there's a way larger discussion here, but I was just curious about what your guys' thoughts are on lore and what's that one vital thing about lore that really brings you into a game world?
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, I could probably talk for a long time about the lore of the game and what makes it awesome and special. You know, it's so many things. It's depth, but not to the point of everything being explained. You know, mystery. You know, the reasons behind things are I want there to be reasons behind things and explanations, but I don't want them to be revealed. I want to have a mystery about the world. I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, and I've read the books multiple times. And one of the things about those books is that there's so many theory crafting stuff. If you've watched, you know, there's just endless amounts of that on YouTube when talking about string this thread and how it connects to this thread. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but I won't. But that's what draws me in.
Nice. What do you think, Midas? Do you have any thoughts?
I use the same story all the time, so I hate being so repetitive, but you need lore so that what you're doing is meaningful. Doesn't have to, like, I agree with Eric that more lore is good, but it doesn't need to be massive if it's done well. You know, if you're doing a raid, there should be a reason that you're excited to see that end boss, and you should know something about it. And I always use the example of Rift, that when I played Rift, the game was fantastic. I loved the game at launch. When I got to that first raid, it's like, why am I here again? And who are these people? And the raid wasn't fun, and I quit playing after that. There's a lot of people that don't realize that. We had a really big debate about lore in the Rainborn Guild. And there's one person, I'm not going to name them, but they said they hate lore. Lore shouldn't be there. Don't tell me how to play the game. But then as they went on and talked about like the questing, and I'll learn through the quest. That's lore. You know, people think lore is role playing. That's not what lore is. Lore is, why am I here? And why am I in this world? And what is my place? It doesn't need to guide you. It has to give you a history. And the history of the lore is more important than a guiding lore, in my opinion. So,
yeah, agreed.
Totally. Next up, World of Warcraft. This was first brought up by Cyrillan in our Discord. So thanks for Cyrillan for pointing this out for me. But Holly Longdale is now working for Blizzard on classic World of Warcraft. I'm sure most of you listening here know exactly what Everquest is and who Holly Longdale is. But around a month ago, she put it out there that she was going to be leaving Darkpaw, which is that new sub-studio of Daybreak Games that's all focused on Everquest. She'd been the head of the Everquest stuff for quite some time, and not too long before she said she was going to be leaving, she was actually talking pretty positively about the future of Everquest. But some time passed, she left Darkpaw, and turns out she's working for Blizzard as a principal game producer on classic World of Warcraft. And over at Darkpaw, Jennifer Chan is taking the lead on all things Everquest and has put out a letter to the players about what the future will be like. So if anyone is curious, we'll have a link to that player address in the description. Camelot Unchained. Mark Jacobs hosted an hour-long stream, which is now up on the City State Games YouTube channel, in which he talked about the progress of the game. And I'll admit 100% here that I don't personally follow this game at all. And I haven't had a chance to watch the video myself. I never played Dark Age of Camelot, so I'm kind of sniping some details about the video from a few places. But in the video, it seems one of the best received points from the community was about the BSC goals of the game. And if you don't know, BSC stands for batshit crazy. These design ideas are pretty core to the concept of Camelot Unchained, so people are really happy to hear about the progress on those. There's been a touch of controversy surrounding the development of this game, where a while back Mark Jacobs showed off an entirely different game that they've been working on in the background. It's a game called Final Stand Ragnarok, and in essence, it's the complete polar opposite of what Camelot Unchained is supposed to be. He had claimed that it was to further the development of Unchained, and people had nothing to worry about. Of course, though, people were pretty pissed because, you know, they were using money that they gained through crowdfunding for Camelot Unchained to create this other game. And apparently in this most recent video, he doesn't try to hide that fact. You know, he did eventually apologize for it, the seemingly deceptive tactic of making a second game, and, you know, he's not trying to hide from it. So that's good. But I also want to kind of know you guys' thoughts, and anyone in the comments, like, how do you feel about studios making a whole other game as a test system? I mean, Ashes of Creation did it with the Apocalypse. Camelot Unchained is doing it with Final Stand. Like, is this a legitimate development practice, or is it just some sort of underhanded attempt to cover a larger audience and make some more money?
When it's announced halfway through its development and they're like, here it is, that's deceptive. If they want to do that, then you need to say, hey guys, we're going to be taking this path, and you need to take a beat down for saying it if you're going to. You promise something, and you promise that you're going to use the money you have to make it. So if you decide to take that money and spend it on something different, at least be upfront when you do it. I would never do it as a studio, but I'm not a developer. But at least be upfront.
Yeah, it concerns me. I wouldn't be happy if I was a supporter of a game and they said, hey, here's this other game just to tide you over, just because we need a few extra bucks until, you know, the main game that you're really interested in comes out. And what if that game, what if the game they make in the meantime is super successful? What if people love it and it's like, I don't know. There's all sorts of pitfalls there, I think.
This is another thing too, that like People always want to compare all these games to each other. I mean, please, VR, don't put my foot in my mouth here. I could never see VR doing this. Like,
it'd be crazy.
I just would never, they would never do that. There's such a different level of commitment to the game and the core tenets and this vision. I just, like, when people compare all these indie studios, one indie studio did, there is no, I will come on the air and I will have the most negative PantheonPlus you if it happens, and I will eat all my words. But I can tell you guys, I could never envision a scenario where VR would do that.
No, me neither. Last up, Saga Leucemia. Week 3 of their alpha testing has been going pretty good. They've been doing a lot of the guided streams with their streamer affiliates, so be sure to check out their Discord for all that info. Last week was a stream by Meyer, and they did another one with Papa Dreadhead. Still nothing but positive vibes coming from the testers and everyone in the community. And also be sure to go check out that BattleAx video, kind of detailing all that alpha stage 3 stuff. Yeah, it's looking cool, and I'm sure one day I'll give it a shot. And a final random thought, there's a new ESRB rating label for loot boxes in games. Now it just says in parentheses, contains random items, and it really doesn't solve a damn thing.
That is too funny. I didn't know that. That is craziness.
Oh, yeah. Right under the label where it says in-app purchases or whatever, it just says contains random items, and that's their big solution. So that's all I got for the genre news.
Once again, awesome job to you guys. Thank you so much to everyone who came out and listened to us. Thank you for all the feedback. We are listening. On Reddit, I put, please give us any feedback. It's all welcomed. And one guy said, well, since it's all welcomed, I said, yeah, man, have at it. And he gave us a lot of feedback. We've actually heard from a lot of people that the bumpers are maybe a little too overproduced, a little too much filtering and pop on it. So we are going to redo those. We're going to wait until Omega has his channel up and running because we're going to re-record that anyway. And maybe we'll try to get someone other than me to do those. That's kind of why I wanted to manipulate them. So we will get those bumpers cleaned up here shortly. We're listening to your feedback, but keep bringing it in, whether it's positive or negative. Help us build a show you want to listen to, because as always, Pantheon Plus is about community. We want to present you guys with something you want to hear. So thank you all. Anything before we go, gentlemen?
No, nothing to me. Another great show. Thanks for a great discussion, guys.
Yeah, good show, guys. See you in the next one.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon Plus related content at Pantheon Plus on Twitter and Pantheon Plus on both Twitch and YouTube. Follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and be sure to follow Omega Contagion at Discord via the name Omega Contagion 6023, and of course in the Facebook group Pantheon MMORPG. Until next time.